Okay, I'll call this October 20th session of the Planning and Zoning Commission to order. First item on our agenda tonight is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice
for all.
Okay. Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Chairman Sema.
Here.
Alderman Whitmire.
Here.
Mr. Bolazina.
I am here.
Mr. McKnight.
Here.
Mr. Malin Smith.
Here.
Ms. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Munzel.
Here.
And Dr. O'Mell.
Here.
I have Mayor Ream and Mr. White as absent. We have a quorum.
Thank you, Ms. Lowell. Next up is the approval of the minutes from our September 29th meeting. Do I have a motion?
I move to approve the minutes from the
I've got
which one? September 19th meeting?
Or the 2019th, as I called it.
Okay.
29th. All right, we got a motion by Mr. McKnight. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. O'Mell. Any discussion or changes?
Motion to amend the wording on the minutes on page 4. Paragraphs.
Would you say paragraph? Dennis,
I
you
think it's
froze for
6.
just a second. Would you say that again? Which paragraph?
Paragraph 6, beginning with the word discussion was held. And in the third line, I was suggesting angling the canopy, it says, and my discussion was about the orientation of the gas pumps, not the canopy.
So would it say Mr. Bolazina suggested turning or angling the gas pumps?
No, that's fine, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Got a motion for an amendment. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second.
Seconded by Alderman Whitmire. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously. All right, we have the amended minutes. Any further discussion or amendments? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Motion appears to carry unanimously. All right, next up this evening is old business. Next 3 items on the agenda this evening pertain to the gas service station located at 2721 North Ballas Road. At the September 29th meeting, the public hearing was open and continued to this evening. If there's no objection, we will hear any comments or concerns from the public and the commission. Item number 1 tonight, the zoning text amendment request has been made by Scott Fell of Nova Group on behalf of Spirit Energy LLC for approval of amendments to the campus office zoning district related to section 405.560 conditional uses, service revitalization development regulations related to section 405.1415 permitted uses, and section 405.1440 off-street parking and loading requirements, and section 405.080 definitions. Item number 2 is the preliminary site development plan. A request has been made by Scott Fell of Nova Group on behalf of Spirit Energy LLC owner for approval of a preliminary site development plan in order to remodel and renovate an existing gasoline service station into a convenience store with gasoline sales to be located at 2721 North Ballas Road in the campus office zoning district, developed under the service revitalization zoning regulations. We do have a public hearing that's on that item that's still open from our last meeting. Item number 3 is a conditional use permit. A request has been made by Scott Fell of Nova Group on behalf of Spirit Energy LLC owner for approval of a conditional use permit in order to remodel and renovate an existing gasoline service station into a convenience store with gasoline sales to be located at 2721 North Ballas Road in the campus office zoning district. also developed under the service revitalization zoning regulations. So I think, we do have a presenter tonight?
Chairman Sima,
Yes.
I'm sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to note for the record that Mayor Ream did join us at 7:06.
Welcome, Mayor. All right, so I think we have, do we have a presenter this evening?
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. Spencer.
I was just going to say that the applicants are here this evening. If there's any comments that the commission would like to provide at this time, they are requesting a continuance of these items to our November 17th planning and zoning meeting, so they continue to work to develop and refine the plans. We did have the first review by Architecture Review Board on October 4th, and they made comments regarding an improved canopy design, the installation of potentially awnings and building landscaping. So they've kindly requested a continuance so they can continue to incorporate these comments. But as I stated, they are available if the commission would like to provide any further comments.
I know we do have a couple of members who were not here last session, so I know they might be interested in providing some feedback. Any discussion or comments? Mr. Millen Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I make some comment, I think it's appropriate to note that while I was absent from the last planning and zoning meeting, I have viewed the video of the public hearing that took place on this matter. And so that should allow me to participate in the public hearing today.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Millen Smith. Continue, please.
Thank you. I believe that the proposed convenience store issue that's before us is in general consistent with the use of that property today. It's essentially a gasoline filling station today, and in essence, in general, will continue to be that in the future. I think that that business represents an asset to the city, and particularly the residents on the eastern side of our town, because it provides a convenient place for certainly gasoline fill up, as well as some attendant food products. I also believe that the McNamara family has been a very important and respected member of the business community of our town for an extended period. And I'm of the understanding that they will continue to manage that site. And I see that as a positive. There are several areas of concern that I would like to voice. I know from having viewed the public hearing at the previous meeting that these will echo comments from some of my fellow commissioners, but I would at least like to be on record as having stated them as well. The first is of most concern to me is the hours of operation. I think it's important to say that this business is located in essentially a residential area. If you think for a second about the surrounding neighbors, if you move just one property line in any direction from the intersection, you are essentially in a residential location. And as such, I think this project needs to be viewed and evaluated with that recognition in mind. And as such, think about the other businesses that are there, and they don't extend late into the evening. And I would very much encourage this applicant to be consistent in the hours to reflect that residential location. The next area of concern for me is the very dominant canopy over the pumps themselves. And for the record, I know that staff has provided the applicant with some illustrations of canopies that exist elsewhere and tend to be much more consistent with a residential appearance. And I would encourage the applicant to take serious note of those. Certainly, those are just illustrations and act as suggestions for the applicant to consider. The third point of comment is the landscaping. This site, I think, is very much a front door to our community. And as such, I think the landscaping needs to be extensive and making it look compatible with the adjoining residential areas. The last point I'd like to make is a comment made to me by a nearby resident of Ward 1. And this gentleman has had extensive involvement in town and country government. And so I take his comments as being particularly meaningful. And one of the things that was mentioned to me of concern was what items are going to be available for sale in this convenience store. Specifically of concern to this resident is the sale of vaping products. The question is the availability of products of that sort consistent with the location? I did bring this matter to the attention of the staff, and I understand from Mr. Spencer that while vaping products are sold at the filling station at Woods Mill and Clayton Road, those type of products are not available in other retailers in town, such as Schnucks or Target. And Ryan, perhaps you could elaborate on that research that you did on this matter.
Certainly, I visited a number of retail locations this morning. I confirmed that Schnucks, Straub's, Fresh Time, Target do not sell vaping products. The only one I could confirm was at Woods Mill and the gas station at Woods Mill and Clayton.
And related to that, I believe, Ryan, you also consulted with Mr. Sluice with regard to the legal question of are we perhaps unjustly singling out one retailer? And Ed, perhaps you might comment on that, because I certainly don't believe the city should be and would be guilty of unjustly singling out one customer, but I will let Mr. Sluice talk to that point.
Certainly. So obviously the question would be in considering the conditional use permit. Sorry, hang on 1 second. I apologize. My wife just took the kids up and the baby monitor was on in the background. So anyway, at the risk of them giving legal advice instead. So obviously this would be a conditional use permit application. So like all other conditional use permit applications, you'd be judging it based on the criteria, the 7 criteria criterion that's listed in the ordinance. And so to the extent you feel that those kind of things could impact your decision, either yes or no on those criteria, then it would be an appropriate consideration. Obviously dealing with this would be a little bit different because my understanding, and Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong, but the other gas station is not operating under a conditional use permit. So it wouldn't have gone through this kind of process. Plus, I don't know, at the time it would have been approved, I don't know there were these vape products on the market as well. So obviously there's that to consider as well. So yes, as like with anything else, you know, hours of operation or anything else that you consider when you judge an application, you're matching them up against the criteria for a conditional use permit.
Mr. Sis.
Ed, could I
Thank
ask
you,
you a
Mr.
question?
Chairman.
If I could?
Sure.
Mayor Ram.
If I could, I'm, as a physician, obviously I'm against tobacco products, against vaping, et cetera. But for reasons that are somewhat enigmatic to myself, yesterday, the FDA basically gave approval to vaping products. Does that make a change in what we can enforce or not enforce? I was just curious of that. If the FDA's more or less imprimatur on vaping could affect what we plan to do.
Yeah, I mean, unless there was some kind of level of preemption, either at state or federal level saying we can't prohibit those kind of products, I don't know that would impact it. I think an obvious question an obvious question or consideration would be whether tobacco products would be treated different to vape products and things like that. I'm not sure if that's me echoing through what you using there, sorry.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so so like I say, I don't think that in and of itself would necessarily make a difference, but certainly it's something I can take a look at.
Okay, thanks. Thank you.
I don't know if it's just me, but Ed, when you came back, I seem to be getting an echo. I don't know if it's because of my connection or your connection.
I believe it was the mayor's. I think when the mayor's unmuted, it comes through twice.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, because I was getting on my end as well, so I apologize.
Yeah, somebody creating an echo. So
Further discussion? Mr. McKnight?
I guess while I also understand and agree with the idea of, you know, potentially saying vaping is bad, I'm not sure I agree with the concept of us deciding what products we should restrict from commercial vendors offering things in our city. So I guess it seems like we could go down a list of things and say, you can't sell this, you can't sell that, you can't sell that, you can't sell that. And it becomes more of I don't know, it's just uncomfortable to me to tell a business that wants to sell things as a commercial business in our city that they can't sell legal products. I guess and I'm not going to say we shouldn't put it on there. I'm saying that it's uncomfortable to me, and it's something that I'd have to think about more before I'd agree to putting that as a condition.
Mr. Bolzina?
yeah, I would hope that this convenience store is going to sell beer. So to the extent it's going to sell beer, I wouldn't think that that's any more dangerous than vaping. So I guess I would not be too responsive to that kind of restriction.
Dr. O'Malley?
I assume they're going to be selling cigarettes and cigars. And I think that's probably worse than the vaping. So I don't think we should regulate the products if they're legal. I would be against that.
Further discussion or comments? Alderman Whitmire.
Unrelated to that matter at hand, just wanted to comment that I too have viewed the last P&Z meeting. So as a result, I just wanted to acknowledge that.
Thank you, Alderman Whitmire. Mr. Spencer, are there any other products that we regulate where they can be sold as a city?
We regulate marijuana
Just
products and where they
marijuana.
can be sold. Yes.
Okay, so there's at least one other product that we do regulate. Mr. McKnight?
Mr. Chairman, I think this is probably a good time. I'll make a motion to continue items 1, 2, and 3. Keeping the public meeting open until the November 17th meeting.
Can we do them as all together? Or do we need to do them individually?
All together is fine.
Okay. All right. We got a motion go ahead, Ms. Lowell.
I did want to note for the record that since the last meeting, we have received no public comments for people that wanted to address the Planning and Zoning Commission, nor have we received any comments via email to address the commission about these items.
Thank you, Ms. Lowell. We have a motion to continue items 1, 2, and 3. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Dr. O'Mell. Any further discussion? Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Ms. Miller, Mr. Bolazina,
Yes.
Alderman Whitmire,
Yes.
Mayor Ream,
Yes.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
and Ms. Munzel.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Under new business, item number 4 this evening is a boundary adjustment plat. A request has been made by Christopher Grow, owner, for approval of a boundary adjustment plat for 2 properties addressed 12200 and 12211 Wheatley Grove Road. The site to be adjusted is located in the Suburban Estate Zoning District, and the proposed plat would adjust the size of 2 existing lots. I'll call for our presenter, Mr. Grow. I see you're online. Please state your name and address for the record.
So I am Christopher Growy. I don't believe I'm presenting though tonight. Is that correct? I think Nick may be presenting.
I don't see Nick on the
I do see Nick.
call.
Nick is on. Nick,
Am I right?
Yes, I'm here.
All right, please state your name and address for the record then.
My name is Nick Coates. I'm with Volt Inc. and 5500 Winona Avenue, St. Louis.
Welcome. Do you have any presentation for this evening, or would you like to just receive questions from the commission?
I would rather just receive questions.
That sounds fine. All right, any questions or discussion from the commission? Mr. McKnight?
Just a quick question. Looking at your drawing, I see that there's the iron rod that's there, and there's an old line here. I'm trying to figure out the iron rod. So can you kind of give a quick overview of how far the line is moving? Is it just 10 feet or so, or is it more than that?
The line itself is moving. I don't have the exact dimensions on me, but the line itself is moving 20 to 50 feet. It's a line on 2 properties that are both owned by Mr. Gray, and it's being moved for the purposes of allowing proper setback for a construction of sports court.
And it's just moving on that one side, is that correct?
Absolutely, yes.
So you'll have I'm sorry to ask a following question. So the utility easement that used to be along the line will now be completely within the new property line. And you'll have to take that into account.
Yes, that's correct.
All right.
Mr. Bolazina?
Yes, I didn't bring this up in a work session, but I assume that parcel 2 is a corner lot. And as a corner lot, does it have enough square footage?
I don't treat that as a corner lot, Dennis.
No?
No. At the end of cul-de-sac, no. It's on one street.
Well, let me look here. So maybe I'm looking at it wrong. Hold on.
Brian, just to clarify, parcel one is the one that's being subtracted
Oh,
from,
okay.
right?
I'm sorry, I got them backwards.
Okay.
So the lot one
It's still,
would be a corner lot, and that would require, what, 54,000 square feet, something like that.
right.
And so it's good. So so the other lot on the cul-de-sac, correct, it's not a corner lot. So
Right.
I take it back.
Further questions or discussion? Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the boundary adjustment plat to the Board of Aldermen?
So moved.
A motion by Ms. Mansell. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Seconded by Mayor Ream. Any further discussion? All right, Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes,
Alderman Whitmire,
Yes.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Miss Miller,
Yes.
Miss Munzel,
Aye.
and Mayor Ream.
Yes.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you, Mr. Growe. All right, next item, next two items on the agenda this evening pertain to a proposed subdivision Greystone Manor located at 1907 Barrett Station Road. If there's no objection, we'll ask the applicant to present all the information pertaining to items 5 and 6 on the agenda together, but we will vote on them separately as they appear on the agenda. Item number 5 is the record plat for Graystone Manor subdivision. A request has been made by Greystone Development LLC owner to subdivide a site of approximately 4.6 acres into 3 residential lots. The site to be subdivided is located at 1907 Barrett Station Road in the Suburban Estate zoning district. And item number 6 is the improvement plans for Greystone Manor subdivision. A request has been made by Greystone Development LLC owner for approval of improvement plans for a subdivision of 3 lots located at 1907 Barrett Station Road in the Suburban Estate zoning district. I'll call for my presenter. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, my name is David Bowles. I'm with Bowles Engineering, and our address is 10849 Indian Head Industrial. It's in St. Louis County, 63132.
Welcome.
And if you don't mind, it would be okay if I share my screen with you?
That would be great.
All right. So this is the set of improvement plans, and I'm sure you're all familiar with where this is located. It's on Barrett Station Road, north of Manchester Road. The site, which is zoned SE already, is 4.6 acres, and we're proposing these 3 lots. And this is north of the subdivision Lock and Heath, if you're familiar with that area. Now, the preliminary plan for this, which is right here, was approved probably a year and a half ago, and we did get an extension on the 1-year requirement. And it shows the 3 lots here. This is a corner lot, which meets the larger corner lot requirement. And the reason I wanted you to look at this preliminary plat is I just wanted you to recognize that this is the improvement plan, the grading plan. It substantially complies with what reflects the preliminary plan. So this is basically the same. And then in addition to that, we have the subdivision plat, and this lays out the street here. It's a public street with the 3 lots around it, and the dedication along Barrett Station Road. And this area is the detention area. So if you look at the site plan, this is the main street coming in, and this is the detention basin. We do have MSD approval, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions. And I have the entire set here, so if you have anything in particular that you want to look at, I can pull up the entire set.
Thank you. Mr. McKnight.
Mr. Bowles, in particular, one of the things I wanted to draw attention to make sure I understand correctly, it looks like you're running a 6-inch pipe around each house to capture any downspout from the house and feed it into the retention pond. Is that correct?
That is correct.
So there should be no runoff from the house that would be washing, well, no runoff from the house that would be piling into the neighbor, no pipe exposed that would be draining water that would possibly flow down to there. Are you seeing this? Are you seeing this as actually, I guess the question I have is, will this reduce the amount of runoff that will be going down into that property, or will it be about the same as what we see?
So which property are you talking about? To the north or?
I'm talking about the
south?
properties to the north particularly.
Okay. Okay. So I'm going to thumb through some of these right here. So as I go here, this is the existing drainage area map. So this is where the water flows right now. And you can see, and we kind of broke this up because there's several parcels up here. So you can see the area inside of here flows to this person's yard. Currently, the area inside of here flows to this yard, and this smaller area goes to that yard. So this is the existing condition. And as I scroll down, this would be the proposed condition. And we calculate the Qs. Now, unfortunately, this one I didn't really separate it out per lot, but I can tell you that the amount of water that flows to the north is less in the developed condition than it is in the existing condition, because all of this water right here basically is going through this detention basin right here. And we've vetted this through MSD already. We have, in fact, this is their approved stamp set here. So MSD would back me up on that, but I would answer the question as yes, that's correct. Less water, or no more water, is flowing that direction than currently does.
Further discussion? Mr. Bolzino.
It looks like the street itself in the developed plan, as compared to the preliminary plan, has an increased slope as you get back to the cul-de-sac, and there's even a slope now, more slope in the cul-de-sac itself. And I'm not sure, couldn't measure it, didn't measure it. As far, what is our criteria as far as slope on the subdivision streets? And could you enlighten us on what the worst slope is as you get back on that street?
Yeah, so the best way to do that is, I believe we have a, this is the actual, so 4% is the steepest slope on it, but this is actually the street profile. So it shows the grades on the street. This right here is the center of what the road would be. So it's 4% coming up here. It's back towards the cul-de-sac. At the entrance, it also comes in at 4%. So there's 4%, then there's a crown, then it goes down at 4%.
Yeah, 4%.
And honestly, I couldn't tell you what this is, but I imagine that's somewhere near that.
Okay. All right. It did look like it changed. I mean, you would agree that it did change. Was that to accommodate the detention basin, or just?
Now one thing I would point out is that these construction documents, this is a 1 foot contour interval.
Okay.
Yeah.
That answers the question.
Okay.
Further questions?
So there's twice as many lines is where I was going with that.
I get it.
Further questions or discussion? Ms. Lowell, we received any public comments on these items?
No, we've received no public comment.
Okay. Well, is there a motion to recommend approval of the record plat to the Board of Aldermen? Item number 5.
Chairman, I'd move to approve the record plat as defined in item number 5.
I'll be happy to second that.
Okay, seconded by Mayor Ream. Further discussion? Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mr. Bolzino,
I would say yes.
Mr. McKnight, Was that a yes? I'm sorry.
Yes.
Thank you. Ms. Munzel,
Yes.
Alderman Whitmire,
Yes.
Mr. Malin Smith,
Yes.
Mayor Reem,
Yes.
Dr. O'Mell,
aye,
Ms. Miller,
Yes.
and Chairman Sema.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Okay, item 6 then is the improvement plans. Do I have a motion to recommend approval of the improvement plans?
Yeah. I'll endorse that. Yes.
All right, I got a motion by Mayor Reem. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Mr. McKnight. Further discussion? Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Alderman Whitmire,
Aye.
Ms. Miller,
Sorry, I was
you're on
having a
mute.
mute issue. Yes. After 15 ways to try to unmute.
Thank you. Chairman Sema,
Aye.
Mayor Reem,
Aye.
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes.
Dr. O'Mell,
aye,
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
and Mr. Malin Smith.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vols. All right, item number 7 tonight is zoning text amendment, an amendment to the regulation of residential driveway gates, section 405.370.a.4 and section 405.470.a.10. Mr. Spencer, you are presenter, or is it Alderman Whitmire?
I would be happy to tee it off, and then I'm sure Alderman Whitmire can jump in as he pleases. This amendment basically just moves the minimum distance of a residential, single-family residential driveway gate to the street from 25 feet to 30 feet. The recent gates that we had come through for Clayton Road and Topping Road, as discussion ensued at the Board of Aldermen level, the determination was made that there are a number of vehicles that commonly would stop by a single family home on a given day that may be more than 25 feet in length, including delivery vehicles and an ambulance, which I believe is 28 feet in length. So I think the thinking here is it's just prudent to extend the minimum to 30 feet so that it captures that appropriate distance to cover these types of vehicles.
Alderman Whitmire.
And if I could further comment, so you will find later in the meeting, I will report that the 2 gates that we approved at the Board of Aldermen level did require a condition that they expanded to 30 feet from 25. So it was based on their action. So it makes sense to consider changing the code in general. But more broadly than that, so I wanted to cue up the notion of just our gate ordinances in general, because in witnessing the actions of this board and the conversation at the Board of Aldermen, there's been discussion around not only the setback, but the design of the gates. We talked about the opacity, or whatever word you want to use in terms of the gates, in some earlier meetings here, where folks were encouraging applicants to open the gates up a little bit more. Mr. Spencer commented on the length of trucks. The other thing that we might want to think about is a lot of these trucks are not pulling into the driveway, they're pulling onto the driveway, so that the width of the apron versus the length of the distance to the gate might be something to talk about. And then I guess that's about it. Well, and then the other, right now our whole focus is on the requirements for, the fact that it be on major roads, and just the discussion around, what gates are all about in town and country. So we bring this some draft language to you, which really is focused just on the length to the street, but would like you to think about all of those other things as well. And if this is something you even want to entertain, or if you want to even broaden the conversation into other topics.
Thank you, Alderman Whitmire. Mayor Reem?
Yeah, if I could just comment, I have been amazed at the number of accidents on Mason Road between Clayton and Manchester. So I fully support adding an extra 5 feet so these vehicles can get off the road. Most of those accidents, frankly, were from people who are intoxicated. But there are certain areas on Mason Road where there are curves and there are driveways that go downhill radically that these trucks can't go down. So I think there has to also be an awareness that there are certain areas on Mason Road, if you go around the corner and you're maybe maxing to the speed limit or maybe a little more, you may come face to face with a UPS or Amazon truck. Some of them, which, like I said, some of which cannot make it down those driveways and get back up. So it's I've had one particular citizen who has sent me multiple pictures of those accidents. So it happens more commonly than you think, but I fully support this. I support the idea of having the gates be transparent. So I think that's more than fitting with our community. I'm not sure how you fix some of those problems on that part of Mason Road, but it does concern me. But there are some areas where there's not much of a shoulder if you come face to face with a delivery truck that's parked right in the middle of the street. This part, at least, I think is part of the answer. I think it is something that I'm glad Alderman Whitmire brought this up, because I think it is definitely worth the conversation. Thanks.
Thank you. Ms. Munzo? You're muted, Ms. Munzo.
I'm sorry. I'm Chairman Seam. I'm not, maybe I haven't exhaustively looked through it all, but I mean, isn't it generally the gates are where the fence is set? What happens when there's a discrepancy with, if there's a requirement, that it'd be 30 feet, and what if the fence is that, it would be in line with, are we then requiring that be different, or the fence be moved, or, I mean.
Mr. Spencer, maybe you can comment on that.
Well, along major streets, you can have a fence in the front yard setback. If they don't already have a fence, obviously they would align it, but they would have to probably shift the fence or tie it in based on the location of the gate.
So with the request of a gate, then that would be something that they would be made aware of, that, the fence would need to be in line with the gate.
It's not required, but it certainly looks better. And probably more functional.
Right. Okay. I just was wondering about that. It seems.
Mr. McKnight?
A comment and 2 questions, I guess, on this. The comment is I recognize in Town and Country that there are places and reasons why people need gates. I'm not a fan of overuse of gates, and so restrictions on gates are certainly something that I see as a reasonable thing to look for. I did not know until just now that the ambulance is 27 feet long. If an ambulance is 27 feet long, we certainly should have at least 30 feet and possibly more, if you think about it, because I'm guessing a fire truck is longer than 27 feet. So maybe we think about what this needs to be. I have no particular issue with moving it to 30 feet, save for my second question for Mr. Sluice, which is, does this open the city to changing to where somebody may come along now and say, well, they got a 25 footer, we want a 30, now you're making me do 30. Is there some aspect of fairness here that we're not taking into consideration? Or is this just looking at the reality and saying, moving forward, this is what it would be?
You know, I think that question always comes up, right? Anytime we increase restrictions, setbacks, you know, maximum square footage and things like that. So obviously any gate that exists at less than a 30-foot setback would become a pre-existing non-conforming use. But yeah, I mean, that's just kind of the way it is, right? If the city makes a determination to make something stricter or make a greater setback, you know, we can do that, or you can do that, certainly, as long as it's like any zoning decision, as long as it's reasonable. And I think, you know, it sounds, you know, without having to dive into it, it sounds like a reasonable change based on lengths of vehicles and things like that. And so obviously if a particular applicant wanted to say that they had a reason why 25 feet was appropriate, they'd have to go through the variance procedure just with anything else. And, you know, if particular circumstances allowed it, then that would be something the Board of Adjustment can do. But I think, you know, obviously I'm sure someone might miss the window for 25 feet and be upset about it. But obviously if you're going to make the change, you've got to make the change at some point in time.
Well, and with that said, I would say I fully support moving into 30 feet, especially recognizing that ambulances are 27 feet long. And potentially this board should look, or this commission should look at additional modifications to this zoning code to look at other possibilities that we might want to look at around gates. And that's it.
Ms. Lowell?
I did want to make a comment to Mr. McKnight about the fire district. If you do not know, recently our staff fire marshal has resigned. So we are now contracting fire marshal services through West County EMS and fire. So we've had quite a few meetings with them regarding building permits, building inspections, things of that nature. And I did ask them about this zoning amendment during one of those, and they had no issues with the 30 feet and did not recommend it to be any more.
Good information. Mr. Bolzina?
Yes, something that Ryan mentioned kind of piqued my interest a little bit. And that is, are we saying that a fence that's allowed on certain roads in the front yard has to be at the setback line? Is that correct? It cannot be. Is that what you said?
It can be within the front setback.
Oh, can be. You mean
Correct.
in front of the setback?
Correct. On a major street,
Yeah.
if you drive around on Clayton, you'll see, you know, up to 4 feet, 50% opacity, you're allowed a fence.
And not be confined by where the setback is.
It doesn't have to
Okay.
be 50 feet or 100.
Right, and that's what I misunderstood. So this kind of goes back to some of my thoughts about the way some of these gates can be constructed, especially when they start erecting these huge masonry pillars that, to me, look like a structure. And if it were deemed to be a structure, then it would have to be conforming to the setback line. And so long as it looks more like a fence and a gate in a fence, then I see that it falls within whatever the definition of the fence would be as far as location. So, I mean, if the commission wants to look at this, I mean, that's one area that may be interesting to pursue. Because if someone starts getting real, let's say, over the top on what this gate and gate structure can look like, we may be having to figure out what a structure is and how it fits our definition under the code. I mean, I can show you some gates in the city that are you know, as much of a structure as they are a gate. So anyway, something to think about.
Mr. McKnight?
Along those same lines, one of the other things I think we could look at is some of the berms that are being built in lieu of fences. If we're saying fences have to have opacity, but somebody's building a 6-foot high wall, a dirt wall in front of their house or around their house, maybe that should be considered a fence as well. So these are things we could look at as a commission to try and figure out what this really means. I mean, I don't really like the bunker mentality we seem to have in some cases. I certainly see that berms are important along roads where you can block traffic noise, but opening up the possibility of someone just berming out their house and building not building a fence or building a opaque fence on top of a 6-foot berm isn't really the same thing either. So anyway.
And that would be, we would consider that as part of the gates, or you're saying just something separately?
Along with Dennis's conversation about fencing, as far as that goes, I mean, it is something that we could possibly look at as well, trying to look at fences and gates and other things in the future. Not saying we do that as part of this conversation, but that just opens up possibilities for the future.
Mr. Malin Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First, I very much appreciate Alderman Whitmire calling this matter to our attention. I was not aware of the length of the ambulances that service our community. And based on that alone, it's evident why the board insisted that the last 2 applications be done at 30 feet versus 25. That makes evident, clear sense. I also very much share Commissioner McKnight's aversion to fences. I believe that they are directly adverse or contradictory to the character of our community. We pride ourselves on an open, inviting, and welcoming community, and gates send a distinctly different message. But I'm thinking it might be prudent for us to adopt a recommendation to the board to modify the ordinance to the 30-foot requirement, on the thinking that if a resident is considering the installation of a gate, it's going to be important to that decision that the thing is now going to be 30 feet off of the street versus the 25. And I think they should be made aware of that sooner rather than later. And so I'm wondering if it wouldn't be appropriate for us to enact, or at least to recommend enactment of that modification now, with the acknowledgement that there are other aspects of this that should be discussed as well, like openness and also apron width. But again, if I were a resident and I were thinking about a gate, I would like to know that by the time my application reached the Board of Aldermen, it's probably going to be required or asked to be at 30 feet, not 25, and that may alter or impact my decision making.
Further discussion?
Motion to approve.
You got a motion to approve.
Second.
And a second, Mr. Bolzina and Mr. McKnight. Further discussion? I guess one question I have is, Alderman Whitmire, you mentioned that the one topic had definitely been the 30 feet, but a second had been, I guess, the openness, and there was a request for it to be more open. Can you tell us a little more about that discussion?
As I recall, that conversation was at this commission, where we were talking about the design. I'm really running from memory at this point, which is always dangerous, but the design of the gate and the opacity of the gate. And as I recall, we talked with the applicant about opening it up a little bit more. Like seeing some nodding of heads. Yeah. Oh yeah, the base, the gate, the kick plate at the bottom and so forth.
Yeah. I misunderstood. I thought you said there had been further discussion at the board.
No, I'm sorry. No, not.
Thank you. Mr. Bolzina.
Yeah, I mean, the current ordinance does require a 50% rule, but maybe the language, if we want to take it under consideration at some point, maybe the language could be tightened up a little bit, but it says that such open spaces shall be reasonably dispersed throughout the entire area of the gate. And I think the one area that we fussed with was when the applicant wanted the entire lower half of the gate to be opaque and kept the top half open, and they relented on that eventually, but I don't know if we had any ordinance base to require that. So if we want to look at that, and like I said, I'm not opposed to passing this tonight as is to get the 30 feet in, but I'm also not opposed to re-looking at this ordinance for some other revision.
Alderman Whitmire, did you have any comment?
I'll defer to the next speaker.
Okay, Mr. Mellon-Smith?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I very much agree with Commissioner Bolazina, and that is I'm very willing to move the motion that's before us ahead, but I'd like the commission to acknowledge that this ordinance does, I think, warrant further consideration with regard to these other aspects. And I would like that to at least be a gentleman's acknowledgement amongst us that if this is adopted tonight, that does not end or curtail further discussion.
I guess one question that I have is would the Board of Aldermen rather see this twice, once with 30 feet and then again with the rest of it, or once with all of it together? We have two representatives here tonight. Maybe you can comment on that.
I guess my thought would be if you don't think it's too hasty, taking in 2 steps would be completely appropriate. Again, back to the point that Commissioner Malin-Smith made around giving folks a heads up as quickly as possible.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm certainly good with that.
Further discussion? We have a motion and a second. Ms. Lowell, will you call the roll?
Mayor Ream,
Aye.
Dr. O'Mell,
Aye.
Mr. Malin-Smith,
Aye.
Mr. Bolazina,
Yes,
Ms. Munzel,
Aye.
Mr. McKnight,
Yes.
Alderman Whitmire,
Yes.
Chairman Sema,
Aye.
and Ms. Miller.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. And why don't we pick up the discussion on where we go from here during other business after our rest of our agenda?
We may need to do findings on this.
Oh, do we need findings?
Yes, we do need findings.
All right, Dr. O'Mell, we're in your wheelhouse.
There is a public need for the proposed use. The proposed amendment and proposed use are in compliance with nor deviate from the adopted comprehensive plan. The property in question is suitable for the uses permitted under the proposed zoning. There are adequate public facilities such as sewer and water and other required public services. The public health, safety, and general welfare will not be damaged. The land values of adjoining properties will not be damaged. The adoption of a proposed amendment is in the public interest and is not solely for the interest of the applicant.
Thank you, Dr. O'Mell. We have a motion on our findings. Do I have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Malin-Smith. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously. All All right, agenda item number 8 tonight is another zoning text amendment, establishment of regulations pertaining to the use of portable storage units and dumpsters, section 405.153, portable storage units and dumpsters. Mr. Spencer.
Mr. Chairman, and as I stated before, I'll kind of lead it off. And if Alderman Whitmire would like to jump in, by all means. So at his request, staff investigated the establishment of regulations for portable storage units and dumpsters. Our regulations are basically silent on them right now. Through a building permit process, we encourage builders to keep the dumpsters on their property or in a driveway, or if in a street, so that it doesn't block public street, it doesn't block a drive lane. But right now we have we're silent on these portable storage units and dumpsters. So staff looked at various cities, national best practices, and to try to determine appropriate maximum size, time period, placement, so forth. I don't claim to be an expert on this, but I gave it the old college try of drafting a standalone section within our supplemental regs. So the major points are placement, timing, size, security, hazardous materials, and exemptions. In terms of placement, the initial draft states that it needs to be on private property, not on a street, sidewalk, or right of way, on a paved surface, basically a driveway, 10 feet behind the front property line. And number 4 says comply with all side and rear setbacks on the lot. A certain staff member pointed out to me, I believe her name's Laura, that a lot of our driveways go to the property line. So I think that would need to be changed to when feasible, because that's not something that a lot of lots could necessarily meet the requirement of. We have a lot of driveways inside setbacks. So that's something we need to look a little further at. In terms of timing, 14 days seem to be a pretty standard time period, consecutive period in other cities. I saw some that said 30, but 14 seemed to be the popular number, or on no more than 3 occasions in any 12-month period. And right now it says no more than 1 portable storage unit at any time, but as we discussed in the work session, that's something else we may need to look at given certain circumstances. I looked at maximum sizes, and there's a exhibit B that shows examples. I myself have had work done on my house the last 9 months, and I've had a 20-yard and a 30-yard dumpster, or cubic yard dumpster in my driveway. City Hall, we had a 40-yard dumpster a couple weeks ago to clear out the basement. So those seem like, that 40-yard, 22 feet in length, 8 feet in width, 8 feet in height is a pretty standard industry standard. When I looked at all the different sites offering dumpsters, it's very, there's a very standardized segment for these dumpsters. And then with the pods, that fits within that size as well. I also put a note about shall be locked and secured, and then also that hazardous materials are prohibited, and I cited state language regarding that in the definition section. In terms of exemption, if it's ongoing with a valid permit, this would not apply, and it also doesn't apply to accessory buildings. These are not, basically saying we're not treating these as accessory buildings. So that's the first draft, attempt at a draft for some standardized, comprehensive regulations for these types of structures.
Thank you, Mr. Spencer. Alderman Whitmire, did you have any additional comments?
I'd just say 2 things, I guess. One, as I said in our working meeting, given some comments by residents, thought this made sense to bring forward to this board and ask you to consider it and think about what you think we should do. At the same time, if you don't think we should do anything, that's certainly your prerogative. And then lastly, I would say that I have not reviewed the work of that Mr. Spencer's put together in detail, only because, that was out of respect for you, that you had asked me earlier to bring matters to this commission for consideration rather than working on them separately and then bringing them in. So, Mr. Spencer's put together something for you all to reflect upon.
Mr. McKnight.
I would say that the thing that I'm a little confused by the language, because I feel like we're pushing two things together that don't necessarily fit together. And that's the idea of a dumpster, which I normally consider something that you would do around construction or demolition, some project that you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And we're defining the size of the dumpster and how often it can be there. And then when you get to H, it's like, oh, I have a building permit, so none of this matters. So I guess I'm a little, is the problem we're trying to solve that people are keeping pods in their driveway just because they want to put, new carpet in or something that's not a building permit? Or are they keeping pods or dumpsters on their property as part of some ongoing work? Because if it's the second one, because of exemption H, it doesn't pertain. None of these rules pertain. So I guess that's where I'm looking at it, saying, what problem are we really trying to solve? If it's that we, and I've not seen this, where we have somebody who's not doing construction and has a dumpster sit in their driveway for months on end, and we don't want that, or have pods sitting in the driveway. Maybe that happens. I just haven't seen it. And if we're trying to solve that, I think the language here works fine. But if it's the second one, if it's a construction related problem, H kind of takes out everything, it looks like to me. So if we're saying that we want to limit the amount of dumpsters, the length of a dumpster in a driveway, those types of things, I think we've got to kind of treat those two as different things in some ways, in my opinion.
Mr. Bolzina?
Yeah, I was a little bit confused on the structure of the bill, but, first it starts out with accessory buildings, but it's not really about accessory buildings. So I got a little bit thrown off there, but.
That's definitions. Yeah.
Right. And I mean, it's a definition for this section, but we're not regulating accessory buildings in this section.
It's just it's a professional thing that I prefer to install definitions wherever I can to mitigate confusion about what is intended by a word. That's just how I like to draft my regulations. I try to create some certainty with what's intended with a word. So accessory building is a word that's in this section, so I defined it, or at least use the definition that we use in other areas of the code.
Right, but don't we have a definition on the code in general for what an accessory building is?
We do.
Okay, so I'm not in favor of repeating it. Okay, once you have a definition, I'm not in favor of then having it subject to some revision or mistake, or did we make it the same? I'm never in favor of repeating anything in a code that's unnecessary. So that's just a structural.
That's a worthy school thought. Absolutely.
Okay, just a structural comment. And then when we got down to trailer, which is something that's near and dear to my heart right now, as Laura knows, we've had a trailer that's been parked on our street for almost a month now. And I'm not sure it's connected with the building permit, because I think it's connected with resiting the house, which may or may not be a topic for a building permit. But this trailer is sitting in the public street.
It's not there continuously, is it?
It's there 24 hours a day. Overnight, 24 hours a day. And during the day, there's a car parked in front and behind it. Okay. But I've tried to go through the traps on this, and I don't think that we have a regulation that can definitively address whether that trailer can be there or not on a town and country street. So, so I'm very keen to regulate that because the contractor for this trailer doesn't seem to want to be cooperative. To move it on a driveway, which is a circular driveway, and it has plenty of room to operate from. But anyway, regardless, it's there. It's going to be there. From the looks of the status of the construction, it may be there for another month. So I'm all in favor of trying to get. And the other thing that was a little odd to me when I looked at that and got encouraged, there was nothing in this bill that regulated the trailer other than appearing again in the exemption. So I'm I'm in favor of looking at this, speeding it up, or I don't know if we can do it tonight, but form a subcommittee, whatever we have to do to try to get this particular bill correct.
Chairman Seaman, I also feel like there's a need for something like this because of, you know, what was mentioned in our neighborhood where they are moving out, but it's not a typical sale, it's a private sale. So they have probably no time limit in order to move out. And so those structures are, I guess, those pods, I don't know what we're calling them. They're not. Okay, so structures are there. And I mean, I think it's a good idea to say, okay, that's fine, but only for 14 days or something like that. You know, like it's good to have a timetable.
Mr. Spencer?
And this discussion is great, and I don't want to curtail it. I would just, at the discretion of Alderman Whitmire and the chair, you know, in the past, we've formed subcommittees. I think this is the kind of document, especially when we're creating something from you know, out of the air that doesn't exist right now. I think it's important that we sit down and kind of walk through all those traps and issues. And I for one, endorse that if that's the will of this commission, because this was just a first draft to try to establish a baseline to work from. But I think a subcommittee would be a good idea.
So if we were going to do that, what would we do with this item? Would we continue it for a time while the subcommittee worked on it?
We
get withdrawn and then come back? Which is mechanically, how would we do this?
Correct me if I'm wrong, Ed, but would we table this discussion until such time that the subcommittee brings back a recommendation?
Yeah, I mean, there's no one way you can do it. What would probably make the most sense is because if you continue it, you generally continue from month to month. So you'll find yourself carrying it over. If you table it, you can put it on the table until someone votes to pull it off the table. So it is you know, permanently continued until you're ready for it again. Or I guess alternatively, since the city's the applicant, I think since the city's the applicant, I assume we don't pay an application fee, so we can always withdraw it and resubmit at a later date. So whether it's a pleasure, they're all valid options.
Laura made me write a check. I don't know.
Made
out to her, yeah.
Well, is there anyone that would be, so we want 2 or 3 people for a subcommittee? Does anyone have an interest in participating in that? Mr. Bolzina, Ms. Mansell, and Mr. McKnight. There we go. Yes, Mr. Malin-Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I could add 2 other points for the newly formed committee to consider. One is, where does this apply? To just residential properties? Or does this apply to institutions and businesses as well? Because it's not clear if they're all included. And the reason I'm asking that is, for example, my church, which is Trinity Lutheran Church on Clayton Road, is undergoing extensive renovation. And we've had 2 dumpsters on the property now all summer. But we don't, I don't believe, have a building permit because we're not changing the footprint of the building at all. And all of the renovations are to the roof and to internal structures. So I would just ask the committee to think about application to types of lots or sites. Second thing I would ask the committee to consider, and this is really, Ryan, needing your input. How enforceable or manageable would this be, especially if a permit is not required? So if I'm a resident and I contract for a pod to be delivered to my home, and a neighbor complains that it's been there too long, and the matter then finds its way, Ryan, back to your desk,
As it always does.
ask the committee to consider, okay, what do we do then? So I very much am concerned about the manageability for the staff, and that we don't create a situation here that is unworkable and or at least at a minimum awkward for the staff in the city to manage.
Further comments or direction for the subcommittee as they're considering it? Alderman Whitmire?
I guess I would just echo Commissioner Madeline Smith's comments around the use of the buildings in commercial enterprises, because I have seen some retailers, when they were doing restaging and so forth, they will bring large pods in to move inventory temporarily and so forth. It's just, again, something to think about. We either modify it or regulate it or ignore it.
Okay. Anything else? All right, Mr. Spencer, would you like to withdraw your application for zoning item number 8?
I request to withdraw and resubmit.
Okay.
He has to write another check, doesn't he?
Yeah, right.
We'll cash it.
All right. All right. Well, thanks. Thanks for working on that. We'll look forward to see what you guys bring back to us. Let's see. I guess we do not need findings. Do we have, I guess, under the topic of other business, then what do we want to do with item number 7? And there was some discussion about the gate. Is there enough there? Do we want to take that up at this time as well? Did we lose Mr. Bolazina?
Yeah.
I brought it back.
There he is.
He escaped.
Mr. Chairman,
Go ahead, Mr. McKnight.
I think I'm kind of 2 minds here, and I want to just put them both out there for people to consider. We have a subcommittee considering textual amendments right now. Do we want to have 2 subcommittees looking at 2 different pieces, or do we want to stage them and do one first and then the second one and have with a different subcommittee? Or I'm kind of like, do we want to have a bunch of things going at the same time that would use up staff time on those things? So I guess that's a question for everyone to consider when they're looking at this. I guess my take on it would be that this one is one I'd like to look at. I don't see that there is it doesn't necessarily need to happen in the next month or 2.
Mm-hmm.
Mr. Spencer was just holding up the please one at a time sign, if I'm reading that correctly.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
All right.
We are headed into the holidays. That's,
Yes. Mayor Reed?
Yeah, if I could just add to that, I've been, in the short time I've been mayor, I've been completely amazed at basically how a lot of administrations, a lot of facilities, a lot of entities become very top heavy with people and staff. Not so in Town and Country. We have an extraordinary lean staff that does a great job. So I'm very sensitive to the idea, let's not overload them. They are already, people like Ryan wear multiple hats. And so I think it would behoove us to take this in a one at a time sort of thing. And if there's anything that has come out from the public's concern about our spending on certain projects in the past, whether it be town square or sidewalks, is a lot of it really boils down to maybe at that time we had too much on our plate and weren't able to completely manage projects as efficiently as possible because we had pulled our staff in so many different directions. So I would definitely be in favor of kind of saying which one of these two issues are the most important to us. Let's pursue that one first and do them sequentially instead of trying to do them both at the same time. I really want to be really sensitive to our staff and not overloading them. I'm amazed at the work they do. I really am.
Well, we already have a group working on item number 8. Do we think 7 is more appropriate to work on first, or should we keep what we've already decided and work on 8 first? Let me rephrase.
My recommendation would be work on 8.
Does anyone feel like we should go a different direction than we've already gone? All right, we'll continue moving forward. I do think that for me, that does make sense. We already do have some regulations for the gates and we don't have anything for these pods. So that does feel like a more urgent need. All right, any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Oh, not yet. I need my report from the Board of Aldermen by action of the board first. Mr. Alderman Whitmire.
All righty. So I missed the last meeting, so I will cover August 23rd, September 13, September 27, and October 11.
All right.
And for the 23rd, the 27th, and the 11th, I have nothing to report because the board did not consider anything that you had considered. At the meeting of September 13th, there were 4 matters considered, all of which were passed unanimously. Those 4 were 13731 Bellcrest, which was the private stable. The second one was at 13512 Clayton, which were the driveway gates. That is one where it was amended to be 30 feet versus 25 feet. The third one was 1502 Topping Road, again, another driveway gate. That one was also amended to be 30 feet versus 25. And then lastly, at 272 Lamp and Lantern, where we talked about the medical office. So again, all 4 of those were adopted unanimously.
Alderman Whitmire.
You're welcome.
Mr. McKnight.
Mr. Chairman, before we go, I just, so we don't lose that one, is there a way that we can put out on a calendar a reminder to consider, to put that back on the agenda in, say, the January meeting to make sure that we don't miss that action, to go back and review that?
Sure. We can ask the applicant to bring it back forward.
There you go.
Any further questions of Alderman Whitmire on action by the board? Mr. Merrill Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'm going to need Ed's input, but the Alderman meetings conclude with the topic of other. And does that privilege extend to the Planning and Zoning Commission?
Does. Other was the topic right before this one. So go ahead if you had another topic.
I do. Mayor, I'd like to take advantage of your presence and the presence of Ryan Spencer and ask a question about what I'll call a beautification matter in our city, since that's something that has always been of interest to me. It's not relevant to any of the items on tonight's agenda, but I do think it's relevant to the purview of the Planning and Zoning Commission. And that is the presence of numerous, what I'll call stub telephone or power poles on Clayton Road. I think the power poles along Clayton Road in general are an eyesore. But what puzzles me is why there are numerous half-length or half-high poles still in the ground that have nothing attached to them. So they appear to serve no purpose whatsoever. And I'm wondering if that's something that the city could explore. And again, I'm sensitive and respectful to the work that the staff does. I'm not wanting to add unnecessary distractions, but I just wanted to have this opportunity to ask you, Mayor, and Ryan, if this is worth looking into.
You know, Ryan, I'll go first, then I'll let you answer. Also, is that honestly, I'll look into it. We'll take a look and see. I really never really thought about that as a problem, but if there are poles there that are not actually functioning, why do we need them? But obviously the utilities have put them in, we have a say in that. But I will defer to Ryan, but I would think that's a reasonable point, something that we ought to take a look at.
Thank you. There's one by your subdivision, Mayor,
Okay.
and
Okay.
there's two by Arlington Oaks
Okay,
that are without anything attached.
okay. I think that's worth taking a look at, for sure.
Yeah, I'll just jump in real quick and then I'll let Laura jump in as well. I've noticed they've been pulling them last week on Clayton, and not all of them. I know one of the issues was I think it was AT&T or Spectrum. There was one utility that still had lines left that I think created part of the issue. But I totally understand your frustration, because I think we've all been frustrated here too, is the length of time to remove them. I don't know if Laura, you've got more information. You're more plugged in on these kind of issues.
So staff has been working with the utility companies to have those removed. As you know, as a part of the Mercy expansion at on Ballas, they put in that Ameren substation. So they redid all the poles on Clayton Road. There has been a miscommunication between Ameren, AT&T, and Spectrum as far as whose responsibility the removal of the pole is, because Ameren comes in first, puts their new pole up, moves their line over, and then apparently they delayed to tell AT&T and Spectrum that they could move their lines over. Now the lines have been moved over, and it is a fight between AT&T and Spectrum about whose responsibility it is to remove them. So, but staff is working with them right now to have those removed.
Ed, would that be a possibility that our legal team could get involved to sort of send appropriate letters either to Spectrum or AT&T to say, hey, let's get this done?
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, I'm more than happy to help if we can. And I'm trying to think. I can't think off the top of a particular individual I know in either of those legal departments, but I could track one down certainly. So if staff don't have any luck with their point persons, or even at the same time, it's easy enough to find out who the right-of-way attorneys at those two utilities are and find someone to talk to.
It has been a point of frustration for us.
Muted. Mr. McKnight.
Just a comment to Fred. I drove down Clayton the other day, and there were two of those stubs on a trailer getting pulled out, and another one being pulled out. So I think they're working on it.
I saw that as well. What confused me is why they've skipped over 3 or 4 of them randomly. And in each case, the poles that I'm identifying have nothing attached to them.
Mr. Bolzina?
Yeah, I would like to suggest that the utility companies have some broad rights in regard to their use of their easements, and that this not be escalated to legal letters, but be more of an inquiry to the appropriate department to see what the progress is to get this rectified.
All right, is there any other business? All right, I'll take. Oh, wait, hold on, Mr. Bolzina.
Wait, I just have one thing, and maybe Will's the person to answer this. When we're all connected and we're unmuted, does that degrade the capacity of this connection? To be clear, because it seemed tonight to be fairly jumpy in parts. So I don't know if I was not being heard. I know that I saw a lot of frozen faces at times, but maybe it's just me.
I think that may have been you.
Yeah,
Okay.
usually it's you. Sometimes what you'll have is if everybody's unmuted at the same time, you'll get feedback through someone's computer going from their speaker into their mic. And so you'll get that echo. But normally it's not, it might just be your wireless or whatever however you're connected.
Yeah, well, I can blame AT&T. They, you know, they're not close to spectrum on speed. So that's unfortunate.
As the former medical director for AT&T, I take exception to that.
Well, okay, I feel accepted.
All right, now we will definitely take a motion to adjourn.
All right.
Move.
Second.
Seconded by Mayor Ream, I think. All in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion appears to carry unanimously.